Pretend you're Capcom. It's 2009. You're rolling around naked in all the money you made from Resident Evil 5, and I pitched you the biggest game in that series yet. It would star your favorite legacy characters on 3 continents out to stop the terrorist group Neo Umbrella before they released the C virus around the world. It would feature the crisscrossing campaigns of Resident Evil 2, but 4 of them, in an all-co-op adventure just like the last hit game, with huge set pieces, a fluid melee combat system, and the longest runtime of any Resident Evil game by several hours. You'd want me to make that game. You'd want to play that game. And Resident Evil 6 was exactly that. Built by over 600 developers, this was the largest team to work on a single game in Capcom's history, and it really shows. The characters look great for the PS3, Xbox 360 generation, enemies are revolting, there's a wide variety of locations and game mechanics, and Resident Evil 6 is easily the worst game in the series. The story is a mess. Characters change personalities with no warning, the pacing feels like a seizure, we not only jump between continents, but up to 6 months in the future, frequently slamming on the brakes for long cutscenes, surprise QuickTime events, pointless busy work, villains that are evil for evil's sake, and with a bloated 21-hour runtime, you really feel those hours in the back half. You do not finish Resident Evil 6, it finishes you. But it didn't have to be this way.
What if I told you that underneath all of these stagnant plot elements and loud action sequences, there was the potential to tell some of the most compelling Resident Evil tales yet? Were there better stories to tell in Resident Evil 6 using the same characters, locations, game mechanics, and story beats? Yeah. They just told it backwards. In this video, we'll be discussing all of Resident Evil 6's story, including its endings. These games have always assumed you knew something about what came before them, but more than any other in the franchise, Resident Evil 6 requires you to have done your homework. So to catch you up, we will be showing brief late-game footage from all of these titles. And if there's a remake available, we'll use that, except for one.
When it released in 2012, Resident Evil 6 went down in history as the bad entry. Over a long enough timeline, every franchise has one. But long after Capcom remade the original Resident Evil, they released remakes of 2, 3, and 4, and introduced these classic games to a new audience.
Over here, stranger.
4's ending clearly sets up a remake of 5, but if you're Capcom, where do you go after that? You have a winning formula for printing money, but the universally liked Resident Evil games that haven't been remade are running out. 7 and Village are too new. The remake of 1 is over 20 years old. You could take a new crack at it, but after that, unless you dig up 0 or Code Veronica, you're only left with 6. At the center of gripes about the game are the 4 intertwining campaigns.
Ada.
Starting in either an American college town, an Eastern European war zone, a submarine, or a Chinese port city, each of our heroes eventually end up in China to foil Neo Umbrella's plans for another attack.
Leon Kennedy's campaign is the most familiar to Resident Evil fans and widely regarded as the best in the game. Newcomer Jake Mueller's story moves along at a brisk pace, and Chris Redfield,
Where is she?
is here too. Finally, series Grey Hat Ada Wong leads us through her own What Was Going On Behind the Scenes campaign, similar to Resident Evil 4's Separate Ways. These 4 campaigns and how they overlap are both the central problem with Resident Evil 6 and the key to fixing it.
Don't shoot! Get down!
Leon Kennedy, introduced in Resident Evil 2 as a rookie cop in Raccoon City having a terrible first day, and returning in 4 as a government agent, looking for the US president's kidnapped daughter in rural Spain. While many of the series' heroes are stoic to a fault, Leon genuinely cares for others, even when he probably shouldn't. In 2, Leon runs into Ada Wong, who is posing as a government agent, but she's really there to steal a sample of Dr. Birkin's G virus. As a thief for hire, Ada steals anything from corporate secrets to deadly viruses for the highest bidder, and she and Leon frequently find themselves on opposing sides. They meet again in 4 when Ada is hired to steal a sample of the plaga for series villain Albert Wesker. They are totally wrong for each other, and they know it, but Leon just can't bring her in, and Ada is always there to throw him a rocket launcher. Resident Evil 6 opens brilliantly, and yes, I am gonna give credit where it's due. This was wild.
Stay right where you are. Mr. President! Don't make me do this.
The president is infected with the C virus and Leon just shot him. Enter Helena Harper, a fellow agent Leon's never met before, but she's the only witness to Leon committing the crime of the century, and she might know why this happened.
The virus has already spread 3 miles past the campus perimeter, and it's not slowing down. You need to hurry.
Not before we check out Tall Oaks Cathedral.
Get used to hearing that.
Agent Kennedy's got a lead that might tell us who's responsible for this.
Leon, is that true?
Yeah. I think I might have something.
Roger that. I'll map out the safest access route.
I got a lead?
You will if you come with me.
The president and his team are in Tall Oaks, a small New England town where he's set to speak at the local university. This first 10 minutes are tense and patient, using a storytelling technique called false advertising. And they establish that Leon will always help someone in need, even when that person is doomed. And then we go from 0 to 100 real quick and stay there for 20 hours. We fight our way off campus, in the subway tunnels, and through the streets where Leon opens fire on the whole town, which is how we say hello in America. Underneath Tall Oaks Cathedral, we find a lab and not what Helena's looking for.
What the hell is all this?
None of these were here 3 days ago.
But we do find a VHS tape labeled Happy Birthday Ada Wong, and we see a clone of Ada Hatch. Shortly after, we locate Helena's sister Deborah. Helena finally explains that the National Security Advisor, Derek Simmons, has been holding Deborah hostage so that Helena would infect the president with the C virus.
So I helped him.
Helena did what Simmons wanted, but he infected Deborah anyway, and now you and Helena have to fight her naked sister as the C virus mutates her. And this might be the place to point it out. This game has a salty attitude towards women.
There's always something with women! You're here to pour drinks and look pretty.
Friend of yours? Or like an ex-girlfriend? Guy doesn't know when to quit.
But in the middle of it all, Leon gets some help from an old friend.
We're up against the people who really run this country. In a very dangerous game.
And if there was any question about whether Leon would end up with Helena, it's gone now.
Simmons there.
Yes.
Hunnigan, you need to be careful. I think he's the one who did all.
Hear my name.
Simmons.
Leon and Helena make it topside, Tall Oaks gets nuked, Simmons accuses Leon of killing the president, and Leon realizes that if Ada has a clone, it means there's 2 of her out there.
We're going to China.
The flight to China encounters some mild catastrophes, and Leon and Helena meet Jake Mueller, accompanied by Sherry Birkin. If you recognize the name but not her face, it's because last time you saw her, she looked like this. All grown up since the events of Resident Evil 2 and now a US agent, she's escorting Jake to her boss, Derek Simmons. They're separated by flaming wreckage, and I'd love to believe that's a callback to Leon and Claire in 2. Leon warns her about Simmons, and Sherry gives up his location.
We're gonna head to the Wong building over in Kuchang. That's where I'm meeting with Simmons.
But before we can get there, they happen upon Ada entering a nearby warehouse. Once you escape the Roombas of Death, you corner Ada, but you're not the only ones after her.
Chris? Leon.
This is the first time Leon and Chris have met in the main series, and it's a good moment, but before the end of this video, it will be a great one. Ada, seen here wearing a blue dress instead of her usual red, gets the drop on both of them and disappears.
Freeze!
Chris goes after Ada, and Leon after Simmons.
Ah, Agent Birkin, impeccable timing. Kindly take these 2 into custody, won't you?
It goes great.
There's information on here that could stop the C virus. Simmons wants it.
Thanks. I'll put a call into FOS, get you some protection. Now move!
Simmons thinks he has the upper hand until a surprise guest turns the tables. Simmons has been injected with a powerful variant of the C virus that turns him into a bullet sponge. With Simmons seemingly dead, Leon and Helena fish themselves out of the bay and find the BSAA, that's Chris's organization, evacuating the citizens of Ta Chi.
Sherry and her companion were abducted. Our
Our satellite places them at an undersea oil field about 80 miles from you.
Abducted? Why?
Files. The one she gave us. Wait a minute. This is the key to stopping the C virus. It's...
Jake.
Okay, I've got a Chris Redfield on the line, patching you through his aircraft.
Leon, where are you?
Chris, we're just outside of Tachi. Why?
Get the hell out of there!
Most campaigns lead to this moment at the end of their 4th chapter. The attack on Tachi, where the C virus is released on the city. Leon and Helena ask Chris to rescue Jake and Sherry, but not before sharing the reason why Jake is so valuable.
Albert Wesker's son.
Chris and Wesker have some complicated history.
Leon, wait. There's something I need to tell you. Ada Wong is dead.
Copy.
Leon and Helena fight through the infected and escape the gas, on the way to an extraction point at the tallest building in town. But why fight a boss once when you could fight him 4 times?
I know what you did! Ada!
But this time they get some help from Ada, whose death was greatly exaggerated. Leon and Helena work their way up to the roof, but Ada needs a helping hand.
Simmons! She really shouldn't have ditched the helicopter. Helena, cover me! Ada, can you hear me? Don't let it end like this.
Wish I could stay longer, but I've got to run. I've left you a little parting gift on the roof.
And after a bittersweet goodbye, Leon and Helena fight Fly Simmons on the roof. And it's only a true Leon adventure if Ada leaves him a parting gift.
Wow, that was a lot, right? We sure did introduce and then resolve a whole bunch of this game's plots. There's still a few dangling threads out there. What was the deal with Ada's clone? Why did Chris think Ada was dead, and what will he do now that he knows Jake is Wesker's son? And who did kidnap Jake and Sherry? But 80% of this game's plot is now resolved, and we're only 25% done. Do you see the problem?
Chris Redfield was introduced in the first Resident Evil and later returned in Code Veronica and 5. He's made a career out of fighting bioterrorism, or more specifically, this bioterrorist.
Long time no see, Chris.
Wesker?
His former boss in Raccoon City, Albert Wesker. The series' recurring villain was last seen attempting to disperse the Ouroboros virus into the atmosphere.
In less than 5 minutes, we'll reach the optimal altitude for missile deployment, ensuring complete global saturation.
And it was up to Chris and Sheva to down Wesker's plane into a volcano and finish him for good. Or at least until the writers need him again. I'd bet my leg he's not dead. Chris is drinking himself away in Adonia, having lost his memory and his manners.
Listen, sweetheart. You're here to pour drinks and look pretty. So how about you shut your mouth?
When he's confronted by Piers Nivens, Chris's former second-in-command at the BSAA. Since Chris is suffering from PTSD and can't even remember his prior service, it's an excellent idea to return him to active duty. And this first chapter adds nothing to the story other than to give Chris an excuse to regain his memory at the end. We flash back to 6 months earlier in Adonia. Chris, Piers, and the BSAA team are now driving back the BOW threat known as Joavo, which is Serbian for "we're out of ideas." After a couple of big set pieces, they run into Jake and Sherry.
You were in Raccoon City.
How do you know that?
Claire.
Wait, are you Chris?
My sisters told me all about you.
Chris, the man is a wanted insurgent.
Yes, he's a mercenary, but right now he's under the protection of the US government. He's no threat to the BSAA.
Unless someone pays me to be.
And we demonstrate one of the biggest problems with these crossover sections. They play out exactly the same in both campaigns. So when we return to this moment as Jake, we'll be taking down these same monsters and blowing up the same anti-aircraft guns we did here. And if the gameplay was unique or enjoyable enough, that'd be fine. But it's not. Chris and Piers descend on City Hall to clear it out, but there's a survivor.
Nice to see the cavalry's here.
Who are you?
I work here. My name's Ada Wong.
Ada lures Chris's team into a trap and does the unthinkable.
Here's something to remember me by.
Ada infects Chris and Pierce's team with the C virus, mutating them into horrific monsters right before their eyes. Chris and Pierce are safely through the gate ahead, but now they have to fight their former teammates. Hitting his head in the fray, Chris had managed to forget that horrible day until now. Back in present day, Chris has one goal: find Ada Wong. The team fights a giant invisible snake, which I want to believe is a callback to Resident Evil 1, but Chris's recklessness is starting to worry his men.
What the hell were you thinking, pulling a kamikaze stunt like that?
These are my men. You follow my lead or I'll find someone who will.
He won't even bring in Jake and Sherry, who are now here in China and being pursued by the same group he's trying to bring down. We converge on the warehouse, the same one we visited as Leon and Helena, and they're here too. Whichever team you're not playing as beats you there by inches. And Chris is so close to capturing Ada when Leon intervenes.
Put your gun down, Chris. She's a key witness. We need her.
A witness? She's the one who did all this!
No, it wasn't her. It was Simmons, the National Security Advisor.
I lost all my men because of her!
And I lost over 70,000 people, including the president, because of Simmons.
She's working for Neo Umbrella. You know what that means?
Yeah, I do.
And you're still going to protect this woman?
I am.
Captain!
What you said about me hiding from my past. You were right.
Captain?
Catch up to her?
And this brings us to the two main issues with Chris's campaign. First, other than the Adonia flashback, this section has been all streets, buildings, and rooftops over and over again. And now we know where this story is going, so the game becomes a slog while we wait for the story to catch back up. And second, Chris's character development takes place entirely in his own head. First, he's a rude amnesiac, then he's hell-bent on revenge until he's inches away from getting it. Now he's introspective and humble? Why did this moment cause that response? Chris should be furious with Leon. But no time to dwell on that. They're off to chase Ada to an aircraft carrier. Chris and Piers work their way through the maze-like ship when they see Ada and Red climbing on board.
Ada!
With your track record, I gotta say, I'd hate to be a member of your team, Chris.
Don't listen to her, Captain!
But where are my manners? I mean, really, I should be thanking your men for being such good test subjects.
And Chris can't take the shot.
Ever since Adonia, all I've wanted is to see you dead. This isn't about vengeance. It's about justice. It's over, Ada.
But he won't have to. A mysterious assassin in a helicopter snipes Ada and flies off.
You got me. Well played. But no one can stop it now.
There's a second aircraft carrier not far from there prepping to launch missiles into Tachi. So Chris and Piers grab a jet and take out their munitions, but they miss one.
Leon! Leon, where are you?
Chris, we're just outside of Tachi. Why?
Get the hell out of there!
Leon asks Chris to rescue Jake and Sherry.
It's Albert Wesker's son.
They fly to an underwater facility where... oh, they got out on their own. Cool.
I can see your father in you.
How did you know?
Wait, hold on a second. So you knew him?
Yeah, I did. But I'm the one that killed him.
And this moment makes no sense at all. We'll get into Jake's feelings about his father later, but Chris has never shown any regret for killing Wesker, nor should he. Wesker was a madman who was minutes from killing billions of people, and Chris was the only one who could stop him.
You have every right to.
And nothing has set up Chris to have strong feelings about his son's right to avenge his father. And oh yeah, there's a bioweapon outbreak happening right now, which is exactly what Chris is trained to fight. So why would giving Jake the option to kill Chris help anyone?
Tell me,
We just following orders? Or was it personal?
Both.
Jake, please stop.
Put a bullet in your head.
Put your gun down.
Drop your
Don't do this.
But of course, Jake doesn't. Chris is probably deaf in that ear now, but fine.
There are more important things at stake than you and me.
Turns out Neo Umbrella had one last trick up its sleeve. Chris and Piers sent Jake and Sherry off to safety and turned their guns on the hatchling, destroying the facility in its wake. Piers gets pinned to the wall, and rather than let Chris down, he pulls his own arm off and injects himself with the C-Virus to stay in the fight. Fun fact, if you play as Piers, you can't shoot anymore, but you get lightning powers for the rest of the campaign.
Got it. Here we go, Piers. We're getting out of here.
And for all my complaining, I like this scene. Chris can't sacrifice anyone else after losing his team in Adonia, even when he should. Piers might have turned and killed him, but even then, Chris would have tried to save him.
We can still both get out of here! There's still time! What are you doing? No, Piers, don't! You can still make it out! God damn it, Piers!
Open the goddamn door! That's an order!
So we answered a few questions from Leon's campaign, but you can see how little was added in the last 5 hours that we didn't already know. Jake Mueller. Jake is all new to Resident Evil. He grew up poor in war-torn Adonia and eventually became a mercenary to support his mother. He never knew his father, but that might have been for the best. Life is cheap out here, but there is money to be made for getting your hands dirty.
Did you take your dose?
Yeah. If you want your own head, you gotta sign up with the lady downstairs. Wouldn't recommend it, though.
No question. You've got the antibodies.
Thank you very much. Wait, what?
You could be the key to saving this world, Jake Mueller.
Save myself first.
We open Jake's campaign with his unit all taking an experimental energy booster that's actually just the C-Virus.
Why are you here?
Your blood.
What, are you the Red Cross or something?
No, listen, those things that attacked us. They were all exposed to a new virus called the C-Virus. The same strain that you just took a dose of. It didn't affect you because you've got the antibodies. Right now, we're racing against a global bioterrorist attack, and we needed a vaccine yesterday. We need you, Jake. We need your blood.
$50 million.
What?
Cash. Non-negotiable.
Jake is somehow immune to the C-Virus, and Sherry needs to get him somewhere safe so that he can help make a vaccine. But there's one big problem. The Ustanok looks like Nemesis and a Big Daddy loved each other very, very much, and it's after Jake.
What the hell is that thing?
He's tracking us. Well, technically you.
Hope you haven't forgotten about my $50 million.
Mr. Mueller is requesting compensation for his cooperation. $50 million. Yes, I understand. I'll let him know.
So, we got a deal?
Yes, we have a deal.
Jake and Sherry's campaign feels like it doesn't belong here, and that's a compliment. It feels like it should have been its own game. Jake was created because the developers wanted someone to appeal to a younger audience, and assuming the main cast were in their early 20s during the Raccoon City outbreak, they would all be close to 40 by 2012.
Pull it out.
No, you'll bleed to death.
Please.
What the hell? You wanna tell me what the hell just happened?
Long story.
Yeah, maybe it's your blood they should be testing for vaccines.
They already did. More than I could stand.
This game would never allow it, but it'd be great if they took some time to explore what life would be like for the children of this series' most memorable villains.
So, you're Wesker Jr.
Wesker? You lost me.
Albert Wesker was a colossal imbecile. A fool who tried to destroy the world. He was also your father.
What?
Which makes you heir to a very special blood type.
6 months later, Jake and Sherry are in China being experimented on to develop an even more potent strain of the C virus.
You know anything about an Albert Wesker? I guess he had an antibody that could fight off any virus. Apparently, he abused his gift. Took it for granted. And then ended up turning himself into some kind of monster. You really think that crazy doesn't run in the family? That nothing of who my father was didn't somehow get passed on down to me? You of all people should know that's true.
It's not every day you find out the father you never knew was a terrorist. But they can't be cooped up for long and quickly escape the facility. Sherry heads out to deliver Jake to her agency, who are here in China alongside Derek Simmons. It's a perilous trek to get there, but they have some help from an old friend.
If Leon was right about Simmons, I want you to run. No matter what happens. Promise me.
Fine.
They said you were involved in the terrorist attack. Is it true?
What? Are they running down the street screaming it to anyone who'll listen?
Answer me!
It's for the benefit of the United States and global security.
Can't see how killing the president is good for the country!
The president's dead?
Well, we have Leon to thank for that.
God damn you, Simmons!
Dispose of them.
Go! Run!
Not a chance.
You promised.
I lied.
And it's not long before they're in custody again. They wake up and escape, quickly running into Piers and Chris.
I can see your father in you.
Tell me, we just following orders? Or was it personal?
Both.
And this could have worked if Jake had any interest in knowing his father. But Jake wrote off dear old dad years ago and hasn't seemed to have had much interest in finding him. So why would this moment get such a reaction?
We got it from here! Let's go!
Wait!
Hey! We got a job to finish. I'm not my father. And I'm gonna make damn sure that it stays that way. We're getting out of here. And you're gonna save the world.
Jake and Sherry leave Chris and Piers to handle the hatchling, but they've got a problem of their own. The two of them team up once more to send their stalker back to wherever it came. Finally, we have Ada. Resident Evil 6 convinced me that Ada should have her own game, but this might be the closest we'll ever get to it.
I'm just here to find out what you're up to.
Then by all means, proceed. So you know, Level 4 requires a handprint for access. I've made sure you'll be recognized.
You've got my prints on file. You're not playing around, are you?
Oh, I've got much more than your prints, Miss Wong. You'll see. Good luck.
We open on a submarine briefly teased during Leon's campaign, where Ada was lured to find an assignment to bring in Jake.
Jake Mueller has been located in the Republic of Edonia. Agent Birkin will be sent in to acquire the target. Your job is to ensure they escape the country alive.
That was dated 6 months ago. That can't be right. I don't remember those orders. Maybe they were passed on to someone else.
But whomever is helping her along is very interested in Ada's motivations. She narrowly escapes and books it for Tall Oaks just a little too late.
There's the cathedral. Now to find my way into your lab, Simmons.
But she'd never miss a chance to help her favorite guy.
Ada,
Of course, Simmons may be infatuated with Ada, but Simmons and his family want to protect the order they've created. Whoever is behind this wants to burn it down.
More games?
Not quite. Just something I think you would benefit from knowing. Proceed to the research lab.
Enjoy the show.
Yes, it was quite revealing.
How do you mean?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it you on this tape, Ada? You're the one behind Neo Umbrella.
I
don't know what you're talking about. Simmons would never be foolish enough to show his cards. He and his family want one thing: to stabilize and sustain the system they've created. But you want to destroy it. And the world will blame you.
Meet Carla. She was a teenage prodigy who worked at the Simmons Foundation until Derek Simmons realized she was a high genetic match for Ada.
No, that's not good enough. That's not Ada Wong. Why won't it work?
Combine the DNA sequence with the cocoon's biostructure.
Find another subject.
Use Carla for the next pass. She's a close match. Be careful what you say around her.
I don't want her catching on.
Yes.
Yes. This is it.
She may have left me, but now I have her back.
Happy birthday, Ada Wong.
And forced her to become a clone of the woman he could never have. And once Carla realized that even though she sacrificed her identity, Simmons still wanted the real Ada over her, Carla decided to unleash her rage on the world.
Captain!
Looking for me, boys? Welcome to China.
Ada!
So whenever we've seen Ada thus far, Ada in red is the real one. Ada in blue is Carla. Ada in red is just as confused as we are, and Ada in blue gave Simmons the C virus.
She got me.
Can you feel it spreading through your body yet? I'm just giving you exactly what you gave me, Simmons. At first, you'll be afraid, but don't worry. You're just becoming the monster you always were.
Ada!
Still haven't had enough, huh? Even after losing all your men? Again. The aircraft carrier is preparing for launch.
Launch?
And the dead will flood the streets. But this time, it won't just be one city. It'll be the whole world.
Carla is shot down by a member of Simmons' family, but it's going to take a lot more than that to bring her down.
If you had only sought vengeance against Simmons alone, I would have helped you. Get over yourself. Help me? I'm real Ada Wong. Hell will rise and chaos will reign!
But what does Carla want? She's not the Joker. We have to know what her endgame is, and chaos for chaos' sake is a dull plan. You can't control chaos, that's the whole point. So even if you win, what did you gain? Sure, she tears down Simmons' family's power, fine. But she's setting up Ada to take the fall for it, and Carla is Ada's clone. What does she think is going to happen when she tells the world the mastermind behind Neo Umbrella looks exactly like her? Ada stops Carla, but Chris and Piers can't stop what she's put in motion. She may not be able to save everyone, but she's only interested in saving one.
You're really confused by all this, aren't you, Leon? It's kind of fun to watch.
And finally, Ada finds Carla's lab. Just like Simmons did to her, Carla trapped a member of her team and turned them into the next big threat. But Ada's done being professional about this.
If you've never experienced a great Resident Evil game before, don't worry, you still haven't. So how do you fix a game like Resident Evil 6? First, the pacing slows to a crawl after the first campaign because the story has already answered most of the player's questions. Now the time between fresh reveals gets farther and farther apart. For example, in the first campaign we learn early on that Simmons cloned Ada. Now we don't have to question any of Ada's motives. The attack on Chris's men? The clone. The missile in Tachi? It was the clone, and we're all just waiting impatiently for the characters to catch up to us. While you could play the campaigns in any order, most players will start at the top and then work their way down. So the first change we're going to make is to reorder how information is revealed to the player by moving Jake's campaign to the first slot and Leon's to the third. Second, what about the repetitive content? The key to solving that could only come from one place. The 1950 Akira Kurosawa film Rashomon.
You may not have seen Rashomon, but if you've watched much television, you've seen Rashomon's influence on modern storytelling. This was the first film to recount a single event from 3 different perspectives. And the fun for the audience wasn't watching the same story 3 times, it was seeing how the story changed depending on who was telling it. So the crossover sections in Resident Evil 6 could and should vary depending on the experience of the character we're playing. Third, Chris's campaign needs a stronger through line, especially as it relates to Jake and Ada. Would Chris care that Wesker has a son? Ada was a known accomplice of Wesker's, why wouldn't Chris recognize her at least by reputation? For Chris's campaign to work, these questions have to be answered. So why Jake first? His campaign can set the tone for the rest of the game, there's far fewer plot reveals, and other than Sherry, we're holding back the legacy characters until later, giving us just a taste of what's to come. But before we start, how would you fix Resident Evil 6? Let me know in the comments. As always, I'll go first. Sherry identifies Jake as immune to the C virus and wants to remove him from Edonia before the Ustanok removes him from the planet. But instead of making the Ustanok invincible to everything, I'd love to see him take damage and heal himself just like Sherry. Just like with Nemesis. No, not that Nemesis, this one. Sherry has some of the only real character moments in Resident Evil 6.
You can blame your father all you want, but at some point, you have to take responsibility for your own actions.
And I wish Sherry would go down Jill's path from 3 and work her way up to standing her ground against the Ustanok with Jake's help. This, right here, was a missed opportunity.
My dad was a scientist. He was working on BOWs when I was exposed. Luckily, I was treated with the vaccine before it was too late. But the virus adjusted and adapted. It's been a part of me ever since.
What happened to your father?
His research killed him. By the time he died, his body had mutated so much, he wasn't even recognizable.
Sherry's talking about her father's death and the virus he created never leaving her. Let's say Jake took these mercenary jobs because he wanted to save up to find his father. We know in the files on him that his mother always spoke highly of the father who left them behind, and Jake loves his mother. So let's give him that moment of vulnerability. And that will hurt so much more when we find out later Sherry knew this whole time Jake's father was Albert Wesker. And since we haven't played Leon's campaign yet, we don't know that anyone has been cloned, setting Ada, who we know from 2 prior titles, up as this game's villain. They reunite 6 months later while escaping the facility in China, and Jake has learned the truth. But this time, let's see Jake's frustration with learning that he'll never get to meet his father. And this pushes Sherry further down the path of taking on the Ustanok, something that not only reminds her of what her father became, but what she could have become too. Sherry reports in and is told to meet Simmons in the city. Her agency is scrambling because the president was just killed by Leon Kennedy. Now she's determined to get back to HQ and sort this out. They escape on motorcycle. Like the original game, they're cornered in a construction site and saved by the BSAA. We'll come back to this in Chris's campaign, but shortly after that, a plane falls out of the sky. Sherry and Leon's reunion is short-lived when the Ustanok shows up, and here we have an example of a fight that plays out exactly the same no matter which campaign you're on. The 4 of you just shoot the Ustanok until it dies, but of course it's not dead. It never dies, so there's no stakes in this fight. But there's a moment when Leon and Sherry are separated from Jake and Helena, so Leon and Sherry hotwire a bus to smash through the wall and get back into the fight. What if the teams were split up for the whole fight and had different roles? Maybe Sherry and Jake could keep the Ustanok in position while Leon and Helena use the bus to ram it. Introduce some strategy that plays into Sherry and the Ustanok's conflict growing, and give Leon and Helena a totally different view of the fight. Sherry wants to bring
bring Leon in for the shooting of the president, but because of their past, he convinces her to let him go and share where Simmons is headed. They escape the Usanok and raft their way upriver through an army of Juavo, but they're getting some help from above. They confront Simmons, but Jake and Sherry are captured again. And here's why I love using Jake's campaign first. This is the only one that doesn't show the attack on Tachi at all, so we save that for later. Jake and Sherry escape captivity and find Chris and Piers.
But I'm the one that killed him.
And now Chris has robbed Jake of something he cares about. But we're not done with Jake and his father yet. And the Usanok isn't done with them. I want to believe this room is a callback to Resident Evil 5, where Jake could say something like, "My father thought he was unkillable too, and he died in a place like this." And just like Chris and Sheva teaming up to take down Wesker, Sherry and Jake do the impossible.
You want stars? I'll give you stars.
And now we have a taste of what Resident Evil 6 has to offer without spoiling the meal. But Jake and Sherry didn't need much, just some clearer motivations and some understanding of how Jake feels about his father. Chris, on the other hand, will require major surgery. Instead of Chris drinking away his memory loss, he and the BSAA have been dismantling Wesker's network since the events of Resident Evil 5. They hope to seize Wesker's research from his server, but it's encrypted, requiring a confirmed sample of Wesker's blood to access. If that research were to ever reach the black market, anyone could have a bioweapon. But as long as no one can produce Wesker's blood, or something similar, his research will be locked away forever. So the BSAA turn their efforts towards Wesker's known accomplices, including Ada Wong from the events of Separate Ways. We can skip the whole first chapter in China. The team follows a tip from Simmons and heads to Adonia, where Ada has been spotted amongst a bioweapon outbreak. Like the Usanok fight, Chris and Piers destroy the anti-air cannons and use the mounted guns to lure out the giant BOWs, while Jake and Sherry deliver the killing blows. But he's not here for Jake. He's here for Ada. But they have to get out of the building first, and that's when they drop their guard. 6 months later in China, Wesker's data cache was accessed remotely by someone in the area, and now the town is overrun with BOWs. It's the BSAA's worst nightmare. Chris is obsessed with finding Ada, but their intelligence support is spread thin because the US president was just assassinated by Leon. Chris is risking the lives of his men to get the job done. Piers shows concern, but he's told to follow orders. They spot Jake and Sherry cornered in the construction site, but this time Chris wants to use them as bait to lure out Ada. Piers and the team reluctantly help, but as the helicopter they're fighting crashes, Jake and Sherry flee. They fight the snake. Ada infects more of Chris's men. He's blinded with rage, but Piers holds him back. They track Ada to the warehouse, corner her, but just before they can apprehend her, Leon stops them. Chris has been consumed by revenge for 6 months. He's finally got his target, and Leon's feelings for Ada are the one reason he can't take her down. Ada seizes the moment and escapes.
We both want the same thing here.
And Chris says, "I promise you, we don't." And tells Leon he's welcome to chase Simmons, but the BSAA is going after Ada. They track her to the ship, have a round 2 standoff, but she tells Chris and Piers the missiles are about to launch on Tachi, and she's the only one who could stop it. And Chris opts to bring her in. A sniper takes her out first, and this is where that moment with Piers in the warehouse should have happened.
What you said about me hiding from my past. You were right.
But no time for that. Chris and Piers almost stop the missile launch, but they miss one. And we finally see the attack on Tachi for the first time, but I'd remove the ground cutscenes and save them for Leon's campaign, because Chris wouldn't be able to see this. And Chris puts it together. Jake is Wesker's son, and that's how they were able to get a blood sample to unlock his virus data. So he takes the job to rescue Jake and Sherry, but he doesn't know if Jake is part of Neo Umbrella. They find them. Chris interrogates Jake about his involvement in Wesker. Jake asks Chris how he knows Wesker, and Chris tells him he killed him. Jake flies into a rage and draws his gun. Everyone does the same. Chris tries to calm him down, but Jake says, "You don't know how this feels." And Chris pauses because he absolutely does. Chris sees the person he became over these last 6 horrible months in Jake. Chris puts his gun down and tells Jake the most important thing is to get Jake's blood for a vaccine.
The world depends on it.
Who the hell are you to tell me what to do?
Stop it!
Put your gun down, now!
If killing Chris will get him to agree to that, he can. The cocoon hatches, Chris and Piers offer to drive it away from Jake and Sherry so they can escape. It pins Piers, he takes the virus, gets lightning powers, and Chris loses the last member of his team. So now we've learned that Leon has apparently assassinated the president, we know he's on the ground when the missiles hit Tachi, and we think Ada, his long-lost love interest, is dead. Leon's campaign is honestly kinda awesome. I'm having trouble thinking of anything I would change about
Tolok's Cathedral. If I don't tell you at the cathedral, let's just get to the cathedral. We have to get to the cathedral.
Oh yeah, why don't you tell me now? Besides this, I like Helena as a partner. She fills that Claire role from Resident Evil 2, and while he's right to be wary of her, there could be a bit more chemistry between them, which Ada promptly ruins. And here, more than halfway through the game, now we learn that Ada has a clone. And all the villainy we've seen over the last 2 campaigns suddenly makes sense. Helena, Ada, and Leon all team up to fight Helena's sister Deborah, and Helena says her goodbyes.
No more tears! Not until I avenge your death. Forgive me.
We're up against the people who really run this country.
Ada's arrival clearly distracts Leon, and Helena knows it. But this time, Simmons leaks that Leon and Helena killed the president and nukes Tolok's to wipe away any evidence proving Leon's innocence. Hunnigan mentions a BOW outbreak in China, and the suspect is Ada, but Leon and Helena just saw her in America. Hunnigan is quietly helping and arranges to get Leon and Helena on a flight to China under assumed names. It goes great. They meet Jake and Sherry. Against her better judgment, Sherry tells Leon where Simmons will be, and they head to the meet, but not before spotting
Ada.
Naturally, Leon has time for a detour to chase down Ada and runs into Chris. And this here is my favorite part of this whole rewrite, because the last time we saw this, we didn't know Ada had a clone. Now we do. And even though we are watching it play out again, this takes on a whole new tragic layer, because as much as we want to root for Leon putting it all on the line for Ada, he's wrong. She's wearing blue, that's Carla. Chris has the mastermind of this whole attack cornered, and Leon showed up to White Knight for Ada and ruined everything.
All right. The BSAA will handle Ada. You take care of Simmons.
But Leon wouldn't just let bloodthirsty Chris go after Ada. I think he'd object. And Chris reminds Leon that getting Simmons is the one chance of clearing not only Leon's name, but Helena's too. Leon should have to choose between supporting the partner by his side and chasing the one who got away. After all, Leon's obsession with Ada draws some parallels to Simmons. This game should confront Leon with the fact that Ada doesn't need Leon to save her. And maybe it's time to let her go. Simmons gets infected with the C virus by a Chihuahua working for Ada's clone.
You still chase me while that woman is on the loose?
What woman?
That traitor, Ada Wong. Who knows what she's got in store?
Another team was sent after her. You, Simmons? You're all ours.
Simmons is convinced that Ada betrayed him, but Helena has been waiting for this moment for the whole campaign, waiting to finally take her revenge on Simmons for what he did to Deborah, and she isn't going to waste it. And the family, Simmons' Illuminati-like fraternity of the super rich who run the world from the shadows, leaves him to die. Simmons gets sucked under the speeding train, so Leon and Helena go for a swim. And here we see all the chaos in the Tachi streets, and then we get to play at Ground Zero.
She's more than just a friend, isn't she? You have feelings for her.
Leon and Helena find out Ada in Red is not dead and has a very serious interest in making sure Simmons is. Simmons still has an unhealthy obsession with Ada, and by that I mean unhealthy for everyone.
Ada!
What are you waiting for?
Go after her.
No. We're sticking together.
And when his dinosaur form doesn't impress her, he turns into a fly. That'll show her.
It's time for me to take responsibility.
I meant what I said. This should be Ada's game. And I don't mind that half her screen time was as a clone, but Resident Evil 6 seemed way more interested in Ada as a myth than Ada as a character. Which brings us to the game's underdeveloped villains, Simmons and Carla. Beyond his genteel plantation owner vibe, we don't learn much about Simmons, just that he's the US National Security Advisor and the head of the family. Carla was a teenage prodigy conducting research at the Simmons Foundation, hopelessly in love with Derek Simmons, but he was in love with a former flame, Ada Wong. Simmons and Carla share a story about obsession, control versus chaos, and how rejection can make a once reasonable person do terrible things. But to elevate these two beyond maniacal tropes, we need to understand how they got here, and I'm gonna propose something a little crazy. I want Carla to win. We open on Ada following a cryptic invitation from Simmons to stow away on a submarine, where instead she finds filming equipment and a copy of a video made by herself, taking credit for the attacks on the US and China starting tomorrow, made by Neo Umbrella. Simmons tells her they had to make sure the real Ada wouldn't be found, and charges go off on the sub to sink it. Ada narrowly escapes. She works her way into Talok's cathedral to find Simmons' lab, but in the past, Simmons was in love with her. She has no idea why he'd want to frame her for attacks that would destabilize his family's empire. She'll need someone close to Simmons who can get her some answers, and she recognizes Leon. She helps Leon and Helena fight Deborah and toys with Leon for information on Simmons, but it's too late. Simmons has already blamed the president's assassination on Leon, so now he has to go into hiding. Ada finds the lab and sees the tape of the clone hatching. Simmons calls, but he doesn't mention the recent chat with Leon. Ada has lived her life in the shadows as anonymous as possible. If this video of her taking responsibility for the Neo Umbrella attacks is released, it'll make her a target forever.
Who is this?
An old friend, Simmons. Ada Wong.
Ada.
Let's ditch the pleasantries and get right to it. That little doppelganger you brewed up just told me she has her heart set on destroying the world.
What?
I like that Ada is able to sniff out someone pretending to be Simmons. She would know him that well, but this is a chance to understand Carla's motivations. Carla admits she hoped the real Ada would perish in the submarine, but since she's here, maybe Ada can help. And Ada doesn't notice a bomb's timer counting down under the desk. Ada asks Carla why she released the C virus on Tall Oaks. Carla obliges and tells Ada the family's Western Hemisphere operation is run out of this very town. Billions were spent developing the C virus right where Ada is standing. If the BSAA got a hold of their research, it would be very helpful in creating a vaccine, and Carla won't allow that. Ada asks where the Eastern operation lives, and Carla tells her it's in the city of Lanshang, China, where Tachi is located. When asked how Simmons will respond to this attack on the family, Carla replies the same way he solves all his problems. Ada realizes Simmons is going to nuke the town and depart shortly before the bomb blows. The next attack is in China tomorrow.
Looks like the race is on. Let's see who comes in first.
So Ada has a plane to catch.
I really wish you would stop running. We have so much to talk about.
Ada's in China tracking her doppelganger, trying to get to her before the BSAA. She tracks her to an aircraft carrier and overhears her telling Simmons he's infected. This might be Carla's last chance to make sure Simmons believes she's the real Ada, and we find out that instead of being forced against her will, Carla volunteered to become a clone of Ada. She loved Simmons that much, but she could never measure up to be the woman he really wanted, and he ultimately rejected her. So Carla started her own lab and built something new. When Ada asks how Carla will survive with the face of a terrorist, Carla tells her she won't. Now that she has Jake's blood, her greatest creation will survive for her. But before she can, an assassin from Simmons' family shoots Carla and she falls to her death. Carla wakes, fights Ada, but there can be only one. Carla tells Ada the video will be leaked onto the internet tomorrow from her lab, and Simmons has the key.
You tried so hard to destroy the world. Now you've destroyed your body. Hope this is what you wanted.
Ada steals a helicopter and chases Simmons, who isn't difficult to find. And as Ada, Simmons and Leon fight on the passageway. Simmons screams at her, "Why not me? I could have given you everything you'd ever want." And Ada looks at Leon and says, "No, you couldn't." Ada and Leon team up to steal Simmons' key and send him flying.
Can't always get what you want, Simmons.
and Simmons dies, believing Ada was responsible for his downfall. So, in her way, Carla wins. But she still has one last card to play. Ada's not much for goodbyes, but she did leave Leon and Helena a ride home. Ada finds Carla's lab, and the greatest creation she was willing to die to protect, born of a staff member that Carla forced into that cocoon. I'd like to know what's inside, but we don't need to.
No. You know what? I do need to know. Carla's too smart to want chaos for chaos's sake. That's a lazy cop-out. What if Carla did all of this just to disrupt the family for long enough to make her final move? If we could write an endgame for Carla, what would it be?
The family is bigger than one man. Clearly, someone ordered the family to turn its back on Simmons and snipe Carla. But even striking Tall Oaks and Lanshang couldn't rid society of the family's control. A power struggle for the right to rule the world would be breaking out within the family, but if Simmons wasn't dead, if he were to return alive, or let's say, a clone of Simmons, that clone could seize control while the family was in disarray and use its infinite resources to accomplish anything. And that clone of Simmons is hatching right now. But Ada destroys it along with the computers before any video can be leaked. The world will never know about Neo Umbrella or about Carla, and Ada's free to live in the shadows once again. But what is Ada's arc here? What's changed? We could have that right here. Maybe someone offers Ada a pile of money to deliver Carla's research, and for once, Ada found a job she wouldn't take and walks away from her own obsession. So, how did we do? Whether or not you're a fan of the 4 separate campaigns, it wouldn't be Resident Evil 6 without them. If the upcoming remake of 5 is a hit, Capcom will at least think about revisiting 6. If they do, it'll be an impressive case study in trying to lift what worked out of everything that really didn't and building around it. But I doubt anyone could agree on how much would need to change. With 11 million copies of Resident Evil 6 sold, this game does have its fans. Like the ship of Theseus, how much could you replace and still be playing Resident Evil 6? Thank you for watching all the way to the end. As a reward for sticking around, use the word pickle in the comments when you tell me how you would fix Resident Evil 6, and I'll reply to any comment with that word in it. This is my first time making something anywhere near this length, and I really appreciate you sticking around. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button. It really does help me share this with more people, and hit subscribe so you can see the next one too. Thanks a lot, and have a great day.